Hi guys. How are you guys? I'm waiting for you to sign on. As you can tell by the time and these bags that I'm extremely wiped. Today was a very, very long day. But a commitment is a commitment. A promise is a promise. And I did post earlier saying that I would be on to talk about maternal mental health and Hyperemesis Gravidarum and its impact on moms and maternal health. Hi. I did promise that I would be on to talk about Hyperemesis Gravidarum. Hi. I can't yell because everyone's sleeping finally. But as I was saying, I'm going to be talking about Hyperemesis Gravidarum, maternal mental health. This is the season of graduation, and a special big up and a special shout out to all of my mothers who have picked up the baton if they took some time off to finish their goals, their dreams in the form of higher education, not just for themselves, but the legacy for their children, for their spouses, for their partners, for their families. If you're chain breakers, if all of that good stuff, these are ancestral things that you're overcoming. I am applauding you. I am sending you all of the good vibrations and prayers because we know that it takes a lot to make it across that finish line. And as I posted today, this tomorrow actually makes 3 years to the day that I graduated with my master's degree in school counseling, my master's of education in school counseling. And as you guys know, I split my 2 accounts basically for one umbrella, which is Lolo's Lighthouse Productions, but you know that my target, my niche focus is millennial mothers. So mothers between the ages of 25 to the ending, it's always up for debate, but I say 38. That quintessential group of women, as I always mention, who are straddling the line between innovation and tradition. This specific category of women who are experiencing pressure, expectation to keep up with the freedom that our mothers created, so to speak, in terms of our mothers coming, particularly if you are of Afro-Caribbean heritage, our mothers coming from other countries, us being first generation, women in another land, and essentially being given the tools to further our education, but not necessarily the support to ground ourselves in that familial space, in that matriarchal space. And there is a woman, I won't say her name, but there is a woman who many people revere, many people look up to, an amazing, amazing artist. I know that she has been kind of highlighted in her role of being comfortable with not having children. I'm going to speak on that in a little bit and how that affects the divine feminine. But sticking to explaining the different branches. So millennial mothers and that particular category, as well as Afro-Caribbean heritage students. So if you have been following this account, Mrs. Zamore, since it has gone public, you will know that I began my journey as a school counselor in the helping profession in that particular facet. And my master's journey, which has been detailed in great detail, rather. Again, guys, I'm exhausted. Exhaustion is just it's like fairy dust. But as I detail in the Audacity to Finish, and I will be reading a clip from that for you guys, the Audacity to Finish details, my experience of navigating those treacherous waters of feminism, those treacherous waters of higher academia, and what it means to literally fight tooth and nail for your family, to honor that space of matriarchal divinity. I call that matriarchal divinity, the space where you are leaving the maiden behind and you are entering the matriarch, and how much it cost me, rather, to honor the calling that God was giving me to move into becoming a mother. And this is a subject, a topic matter that many women in our collective, particularly of our generation, this 25 to 38, who are suffering in silence when it comes to mental health. When we think of mental health as a concept, we think of this like high, lofty thing of just a once a month, once a year of highlighted focus. But as I always talk about on these lives and in my posts, mental health is, how did you wake up in the morning? How did you wake up? Did you wake up in anxiety? Did you wake up panicking? Did you wake up afraid of what the day was going to entail? Did you wake up in your sound mind? Were you able to plan? Were you able to basically function, with certainty that you'd be able to make it through the day? Were you able to move in the world in a sound mind? And so mental health encompasses everything for a mother. It's her first footing after her breath, because the first thing when you wake up in the morning when you have children is, okay, I'm alive, now what do my babies need? And I read a comment on one of the popular blogs where they were interviewing this particular woman, and again, the media has a way of portraying and bending and twisting people's stories, narratives, for the purpose of whatever, to meet their baseline. But it's the thread, and that's where we as women, as the divine feminine, when we're spewing out these commentaries, we can see that they're coming from places of woundedness. They're coming from places of unfulfilled destinies or unfulfilled calling spaces, all kinds of energies where we are using other people's narratives to now spew our own. And what drives me crazy about that, and it's taken me a few days to come on here to talk about this, because I'm not the one that's going to come on here and be all emotionally explosive. I don't think that it's helped. In my personal opinion, my humble opinion, it could get really dangerous when you use social media as a journal. And so you feel one way one minute, and then you go to bed and tomorrow you don't feel the same way, but social media is like, nah, I got you. So it took me a minute to come on and talk about this, but again, because of maternal mental health and gestational illness and all these things, I thought about the responses, the threads that some of these women were responding to about the fact that this woman didn't have children, and some of the comments were something along the lines like, yeah, girl, I don't have kids and I'm beautiful and I'm thriving. And it wasn't in a way where it was like affirming and reflective of, decisions and acceptance, etc. It was more along the lines of, that's why your skin looks good, or that's why you're so happy and beautiful. That's why you still have your edges. People with kids are crazy, or, just language that is so disrespectful to the divine feminine in the fact of what it means to be a matriarch and the sacrifices that our mamas made to put us on this earth. And in this space of being millennial women, where we come up against these challenges of being taught, as I talk about on my podcast, as I mentioned, if you've been following this space long enough, you'll know that to heal, the first wave of healing for my C-section was to create the beautiful struggle. First as a blog and podcast, and now as an extended part of my company where I offer resources, etc. And so if you've been following from the beginning, you'll know that one of the primary questions that I wanted to answer or solve or investigate, rather, was the basis for our generational experience, in that we are taught that you can get the coin, you can cop it, you can, be black and abroad and all these things. But there is no foundational groundwork for what it means to move through successfully or leave successfully for rest, for recuperation, the academic space or the workplace this space of equality to the masculine, to be a mother. There is no blueprint. And, I journeyed into motherhood in 2014. My first son was born in 2015, and this was not a topic for discussion. There were not as many hashtag movements. There wasn't this many commercialized material or exposure about what it means to be a mother. Now you go online and it's like, there's many different types of accounts where women are now being pushed to and I say push because the average mom who has had a C-section or who's navigating how she's going to pay her bills is not going to show you that on social media. She's not going to take pictures of her bank account. She's not going to do that unless it's for commercial purposes, unless she's trying to, create a space where a solution will be provided. And so, when you see the average woman who is grappling with these matters of how to manage her mental health, it becomes this space where it's pretty toxic. And then you come across threads like these, and it makes you wonder, did I make the right decision by being a mother? Am I missing out on something? Did I do something wrong? And I'm bringing this all circumspect to say these are the toxic thoughts that go through the minds of mothers who want their higher education degree but face a condition that is as crippling as hyperemesis gravidarum. This is the mental back and forth that she encounters when she's like, oh my God, I've worked how many years for this, but I've also been blessed with being able to bear fruit. And, a lot of us will look at our experiences in journeying into motherhood as like this mistake. And I'm not talking about whether you've conceived in or outside of marriage. That's a different topic, and for a different outcome or that's not what this conversation is about. It's about our generation's approach and this feeling or this energetic vibration of shame or guilt if you have chosen to engage in becoming a matriarch while achieving an academic goal. So that means let's use myself as an example and the audacity to finish, if I'm a married woman of a certain age and I hate to use that language and I just happen to get pregnant. If I'm a married woman of a certain age and I become pregnant, if I am bearing fruit, and why should I look at that with shamefulness? Why should I look at that, through sorrow-filled eyes that I have disappointed something? And that's an experience that I went through with the program that I graduated from, thanks be to God. But the experience of going through that, of being pregnant with my first child, with having such a crippling condition, which I'm going to decree in a minute, and feeling like this is horrible, I made a mistake, or I'm never going to get through it, or I'm going to become another statistic. If you are a woman of color, if you're a black woman, I know we use this whole woman of color, and I'm very conscious about talking about the vessel that I show up in. As a black woman married to a black man, I already understand the implications of certain decisions that you make. And so you will encounter, staffs that will look at you or faculty that will look at you like, sorry, girl, you made this decision. You need to deal with whatever thus and such happens after. And me being married gives me a certain type of support. And so what happens to women who, maybe were married or divorced, or, they have partnerships and they become unsupportive? These are real issues that impact maternal mental health, that predict what type of postpartum experiences these women, our women collectively, right, are going to have. And so I bring this up alongside that commentary, that thread that I read, and I'm like, you know what, this is just not healthy. This is, we're in a time where we're talking about, collectivism and women using their voices in the right manner, but still we are bleeding at the core. We have so many issues within our collective, and I think that it starts with ancestral healing. What experience did your mother have? What experience did your grandmother have? What experience did your great-grandmother have? What are their relationships to men? We're smashing the patriarchy, but what are our relationships to men, to our fathers, to our brothers, to our god brothers? What's our relationship to men? And how does that impact? Because all of these things have to do with not just, diagnosing postpartum depression, but what's the root of that? Where does that come from? It comes from a deep-seated, besides hormonal imbalances, besides, your entire insides being shifted, for lack of a better expression. You're talking about emotional processing. As a mental health professional, that's the basis of what your understanding is. How are you processing? What does grief mean to you? And we fail to make the links between how we step into this space of motherhood from pregnancy. Thinking about that thread and thinking about some women who I know are pregnant right now, I would be petrified, because even though there's a lot more information and resources available, the vibration, what people are saying with their mouths, how we're communicating, I would be petrified. I'm sorry to say that, but that's what I pick up. That's what I feel. And my heart aches because I'm thinking, bearing my own 2 children, becoming a mother is one of the greatest experiences a woman will ever have. And I just hate the fact that we're feeding into this hype that, like, you become a mother and you lose your life. You become a mother and, nah, girl, your life's never going to be the same, or, nah, girl, you're missing out, and it's just an unequal, or an unbalanced, rather, vibration for women, collectively speaking. So we're looking at these Instagram accounts and we're seeing women who are taking comfort in talking about how bad motherhood is. I'm not saying that we should not be talking about the ails and the throes. We're not talking about that. We're talking about how, when we get off of this space, how when we are with our families or we're going through our struggles, do we look at motherhood as, man, my life would have been better if I didn't have kids. Man, my friends are having such a much better experience than I am because they don't have kids. And this is something very central to our generational experience. And that was something that I deeply struggled with when I was going through my master's program. Because why? The first round, if you pick up a copy of the book, link is in my bio. It's available on Amazon. It's also physically available at Greenlight in Brooklyn. So please send your friends, your coworkers, your spouse, your partner, send everybody. Send everybody to Greenlight on Fulton to get a copy of the book. But I'm going to be sharing with you just how difficult it really was for me as a type A, high achieving, bearing much expectation, familial expectation, that I was going to be the first in my family to gain a master's degree. Like, it's a big deal. And it's still a big deal. I'm looking at so many different people graduating and, that honor of crossing a certain threshold. And to have it come head to head with becoming a mother, and that being almost like devalued, like, girl, you're about to get your master's. What do you mean you're pregnant? What do you mean you now have a gestational condition? Like, you could have waited. I have family members who were just very disrespectful about it. Like, you should have waited. How do you think that makes a mother feel? How do you think she's processing the greatest gift that she could receive? And so, in talking about gestational illness now, it felt like an insult to injury. Like, I knew that God had given me divine wisdom, had confirmed that this would be something that I would be masterful at, and just to say that I'd make it through. Again, if you pick up a copy of the book, you'll see exactly what I mean for proper context. But as a human, I was scared. As a human, my mental health was ailing in the sense that fear overtook me. I was willing to go to bat with my professors to prove that I could stay in this program. I was going to finish. Meanwhile, I had my OBs and my attending physicians looking at me like, girl, you crazy? Like, you're willing to risk your first child? You're willing to risk having a miscarriage? You're willing to risk other types of complications just for a master's degree? And even in that space, looking at these physicians who don't look like me, who are white, they would never understand the implication of a master's degree. They would never understand the importance of having you know, culturally reached that milestone. And so as a mother, I'm speaking truth to fire on a different wavelength, or from a different perspective of this divine feminine. Like, yes, we can celebrate women who choose to be childless, who choose, to live a free life, a life that means no particular obligations. We're talking about choices here in our generational concept of feminism, what it means for our particular generation. And I'm speaking to it from a different perspective of choosing to have children and now being smacked in the face with hyperemesis gravidarum. So regular, and this is not gestational illness, like morning sickness, which herbalist and midwife Aviva Ram, I love her to death, great writer. Aviva Ram talks about just what is what they call nausea and vomiting of pregnancy. So it's NVP, and that's normal. So, with the changing of hormones, the growth of the child, and I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not a midwife, I'm not a doula, so if the language is off, please forgive me. But essentially, Aviva Ram talks about that, NVP, and the difference between NVP and now hyperemesis gravidarum. Okay, there's a severe difference between the two. And I'm going to read you a section from the book that talks about my personal experience before I get to the scientific. So it says, these classes were only 4 times for the entire semester, and you simply could not be absent. If you missed one, you were automatically considered failing. For the entire duration of the program, I had not missed one. However, moving into about the 9th or 10th week of gestation, right at the beginning of the class's start date, my health's deterioration had reached a head. By this point, mid-September, I had been put on mandatory bed rest by my obstetrician because I had lost 7 pounds in just 1 week and showed no signs of slowing down. I began to exhibit symptoms that went far beyond typical morning sickness. I could no longer sit for extended periods of time, nor stand, as I would become extremely dizzy. I eventually could not consume anything. I could not even drink water, as it would send me gagging. I continued to lose weight at an unprecedented rate, and my skin began to lose color. I was vomiting well over 5 times daily. From getting out of bed in the morning to trying to bathe, I needed help with everything. And so I read that particular section to show you that I had not yet withdrawn from the program. I did not know my rights as a student, that I could actually successfully withdraw. And if you pick up a copy of the Audacity to Finish, we're talking about mental health. This was a trigger for me because, as you learn in the earlier part of the work, I already went through an experience of having to withdraw based off of a perceived medical condition. And so, again, when you're talking about maternal mental health and you're talking about trigger, and you're talking about healing and stages of healing and feeling like your life is finally moving in the right direction, meaning you're achieving your goals, you're able to do certain things, being in a particular space like this can be, staggering, to say the least. And I'm just saying this to be mindful of the fact that there are women who are afraid, a legit condition, a legit fear that they are letting somebody down if they are to take care of themselves while navigating a particular condition like this. Because why? It's not a condition that is considered like real. And back in 2014, in the fall semester of 2014, the only person that had HG at that time was Princess Kate. And it is a condition. Aviva Ram describes it here, where it only affects, guys, hold on, it only affects 0.3% to 2% of all pregnancies. And this book was written, this is 2016, what I'm reading from. My experience was in 2014. And so I just want you to be mindful of the lack of awareness that I would have had at that time, or any other mother that is that is parallel to my experience, what we were going through. The fear that, like, nobody thinks this condition is real. Everybody thinks that I'm just making it up. Like, even for my parents, and my spouse, like understanding that this is a legit medical condition caused by gestation was something that was like hard to process or hard to grasp. And so what she describes here is hospitalization for hyperemesis is common, peaking at approximately 9 weeks of gestation and leveling off at around 20 weeks. The pathogenesis of hyperemesis is unknown. So you don't even know where you get it from. You don't even know why you get it. My OB, God bless her, my first OB, Dr. Hashmi, I love her to death, but she, my husband's in the back saying big up Dr. Hashmi, but the biggest response that she could give to us as a family navigating this was just it's a major hormonal imbalance, because that's the lack of information that was given to OBs or physicians, practitioners at that time. Okay, and so I want you to understand, it also says, when properly treated, hyperemesis gravidarum is associated with a very low morbidity and mortality rate, but without adequate treatment, the mother may experience micronutrient deficiency caused by B1 deficiency and consequences of malnutrition. For example, propensity toward infection or slow healing wounds. Okay, so it is not something that is light. It's not something easy to deal with. And these are just the physical factors we're talking about. This is just how it surfaces on the vessel, the body. We're not even talking about the profound psychological effects. So we're talking about it from my experiential perspective, meaning I was scared, I was nervous, I was now being bombarded with very, very hostile perspectives or responses, rather, from my chair, from my program, faculty, etc., and, other family members who may not have understood why I decided to have children at that particular time in my program. And I found it extremely insulting that people would think that you would reach the final leg of your program and think that you'd want to quit because you're pregnant. Meanwhile, women, I love what Dr. Tatiana Cruz, one of my favorite episodes from the podcast, she talks about this, like women-led revolutions with babies on their backs, babies in their stomachs. So I found that to be quite insulting, and I thought that was predominantly because of the vessel that I show up in, that black women, we quit, or we have babies at the wrong time, and all those other types of stigmas and dogmas that are attached to us, which also affects this collective of ours, this divine feminine collective of ours, that if we were to be blessed with children, we think it's the wrong time. And I know there's very sensitive political things being spoken about right now, and I'm not even going to go there. I'm really on the basis of maternal mental health. But as you can see, existing is an act of politics, but I'm no politician. So I'm going to stop right there. I just want to say that she remarks here, and as you'll read in my book, how it relates in real life. She says, psychological factors particularly show up as feelings of ambivalence about the pregnancy have been suggested as part of etiology. However, this theory has not been born out of psychological evaluation of women with this condition. And studies are confounded by the fact that the experience of hyperemesis can lead to feelings of ambivalence. Okay? And I'm just going to put more of a experiential context on that. Ambivalence is that's like patty cake. You can feel depressed. You feel isolated. You feel disconnected. I want you to envision being in bed. Basically, when they say bed rest, a lot of women are afraid of that. And so it's easy to want to take other medicalized interventions. Like for me, they gave me, I can't even remember, but we went from prescription to prescription because nothing was working. And that was scaring me because I didn't know what the prescriptions, the side effects, the long-term side effects. And so I would feel comfortable because I would be able to have a break, a small break, meaning I could sleep all night, meaning I wouldn't be waking up in the middle of the night thirsty but afraid to drink water because I'd be vomiting. And these are real examples. But then the psychological factor comes in of I can't sacrifice my baby for me. Like, I can't be taking these drugs and then not knowing what it's going to do to my child. And this is real. This is something very, very real that mothers who are navigating this particular condition are going through. Now, compile that with a fear that I can't drop out, mindful of the language I'm using, I cannot withdraw on a medical leave from my program because it's going to make me look bad. It's going to make me look like I'm not meeting the mark. And so I want us to be mindful of the vibration that we're carrying from motherhood. Again, when we're going on these threads from the women who are leaving these, comments to those of us who are internalizing them and then thinking that we need to fight back and pop off and be like, no, it's just not productive. It's just not productive. And for women who are stepping into this space that is matriarchy, it could be frightening. It can make you feel isolated. And for me, I am, like I mentioned, extremely type A. I'm extremely independent. Came from those Fordham resident director days. I made up my own way, took care of myself, drove my own car, did what I wanted when I wanted. Independent, strong black woman, right? Right? To now, needing my husband to do everything for me, putting my feet on the floor, taking me into the bathroom. I had not washed my hair in almost 6 weeks. I'm being very, 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 very specific here, to needing to test different types of food and vomiting them in someone's hands, being completely vulnerable, being completely at someone else's, he's over here making jokes. It's not funny. Just everything and the amount of vulnerability it takes to make it through that. And so many people don't understand, when you have a gestational condition, how weak you can become. We're just talking physical, how weak, and you don't even know what's wrong with you. You don't know how long now. Aviva Ram, she does mention from a clinical perspective that this is now a clinical diagnosis. So if you go to the doctor and you're exhibiting these signs where it's like you're losing, it's a certain percentage of body weight. Like for me, I lost 7 pounds instantaneously, and we already knew something was up from then. Then there's ketones. They take your urine, and if you have heightened ketones, they know. So there's certain things that are now markers that you could be clinically diagnosed with. But I don't know that will have that much impact in terms of the space of academia. And I want to shift to read from another book that I love, and it's called The Big Letdown. And I'm bringing this into the discussion to give you an understanding as to how my generation of women somehow makes decisions or rationalizes things because of the world around us, or because of the society that we live in, because of What's the root? Of